The movie starts at the medical college, where there is a professor named Natasha explaining to the students how important sleep is for maintaining the mind, body, and vital functions. She tells them that if a person sleeps less than 5 hours, they experience symptoms like insomnia and anxiety, causing their mind to become highly sensitive, which affects their physical health. If a person doesn't sleep for 2 days, they lose focus entirely and feel lost most of the time. After 3 days without sleep, they start seeing visual and auditory hallucinations, and even experience delusions due to the collapse of their mind caused by lack of sleep. At that point, we meet a girl named Jean, who is a medical student and excels in her university studies. Because she loves studying, she spends all day reading and even stays up late for days in order to top her class. We learn that 3 years ago, a group of thieves broke into her parents' house to rob them, and during the robbery, they killed her father and mother. Since then, she and her sister June moved to live with their grandmother. Because of the trauma, Jean developed a psychological condition, and she has to check every night to ensure all the doors in the house are locked to keep her sister and grandmother safe. One day, Jean wakes up to find a letter from the bank warning her that they are going to seize her grandmother's house within 3 months unless she pays the loan she had taken, which is worth 750,000 baht, Thailand's currency. Jean is very upset because she is in a difficult financial situation and can't afford to pay such a large amount. When she goes to university, she meets Dr. Natasha and tells her that she has decided to leave medical school to work and pay off the loan. Dr. Natasha sympathizes with her, but tells her that this decision is a huge mistake because she only has 2 more years to graduate, and she's the top student in her class, so it would be a waste to ruin her future. Jean explains that she has no choice, but Dr. Natasha interrupts her and gives her a business card for a German pharmaceutical company. They are looking for volunteers for an experiment called the ZDEEB experiment, and in return, they will pay a lot of money. She suggests that Jean join the experiment to get the money to pay off her loan, and Jean agrees. At the company, she watches a video explaining the ZDEEB experiment. The experiment involves extracting a substance called serotonin from the human brain, which is released when a person stays awake for an extended period. If a person stays awake for 2 or more days, the level of serotonin in their brain increases significantly. After Jean watches the video, Dr. Miller, the company's director, comes to speak with her. He explains that the experiment has 3 levels, and if she participates in the first level, she will receive 100,000 baht. In return, she will have to stay awake for a full day without sleeping, as they need to extract the substance serotonin from her brain to create a therapeutic formula. Jean agrees and signs the consent form for the experiment. At that moment, Dr. Miller implants an advanced chip in her neck, explaining that the chip's purpose is to extract the serotonin from her brain. Jean becomes very frightened of the experiment, feeling it is dangerous, but Dr. Miller reassures her and gives her a high-tech watch to wear. He explains that the watch will measure her heart rate and track the amount of serotonin that accumulates in the chip in her neck. If she stays awake for a full day, the watch will show that her serotonin levels have reached 100%. At that point, she will need to return to the company, so Dr. Miller can extract the serotonin from the chip and give her the 100,000 baht. Jean thanks him and decides to leave the company, but before she leaves, Dr. Miller warns her not to sleep again. If she sleeps for even a minute, the chip will malfunction and begin electrocuting her until her heart stops. Jean is terrified and wants to back out of the experiment to avoid putting her life at risk, but Dr. Miller reassures her again and tells her that the watch has an alarm system that will wake her up if she falls asleep. He also instructs her to keep the experiment a secret. Jean agrees, and she leaves the company. When she gets home, she starts studying late into the night. She checks the watch and sees that her serotonin levels are at 41%. She goes to her grandmother to give her a back massage and tells her that she found a good job and will be able to pay off the loan. Later, her sister June comes home late. Jean asks her where she has been, and June replies that she was practicing with her music group. June then asks Jean not to interfere with her life anymore and walks away. The next day, Jean goes to university and sits down to have breakfast. Her classmate Wayne approaches her and tells her that he saw the company's watch on her wrist. He reveals that he too is participating in the experiment. Jean is shocked because she knows Wayne is a reckless guy who doesn't need money, as he spends all his time in bars drinking and using drugs. She advises him not to tell anyone about the experiment and asks him who told him about it. Wayne tells Jean that he was late to the lecture the day before, and when Dr. Natasha asked why he was late, he told her that he had been studying all night and hadn't slept for 3 days. Dr. Natasha then invited him to the library and gave him a card for the company, offering him the chance to participate in the experiment in exchange for money if he stayed awake. After finishing his story, Wayne points to a girl named Sin and introduces her, saying that she's also participating in the experiment. He tells Jean that Sin is a famous blogger with many followers, but she doesn't have any friends at university because she never wanted to attend medical school in the first place. Her parents forced her to join so she could become a doctor like them. However, Sin has been trying to fail her exams on purpose so that she can transfer to communication school. Due to mental health issues, Sin suffers from anxiety and can't sleep normally, so she has to take sleeping pills to be able to rest. At that moment, Jean notices Sin's company watch, and Wayne confirms that she, too, is part of the experiment. They sit together, and Wayne tells them about a guy named Beach, another participant. He calls Beach over to join them. Wayne explains that Beach is a gaming expert with no friends because he's a loner who doesn't talk to anyone. He spends all his time playing video games. Beach joins them, and they exchange contact details to become friends. Later, they all check their watches and discover that the serotonin levels extracted from their brains are at 80%. This means they have only 20% left before completing the first level of the experiment. After 6 more hours, they'll reach the final percentage. They head to the company so that Dr. Miller can extract the remaining serotonin from the chip in their necks. Dr. Miller gives them the agreed 100,000 baht, and they're all excited. They spend the money, buying everything they wanted, except for Jean, who uses hers to pay off her loan and buys a phone for her sister June. The next day, the 4 of them meet up and go to a bowling alley to hang out. While they're there, Sin expresses that she feels like someone has been watching her ever since she joined this deep experiment. She's very scared, wondering if someone knows about their participation and might want to harm them to steal their money. Wayne dismisses her fears, telling her she's just imagining things. At that point, Jean asks them what they would do if Dr. Miller offered them the chance to participate in the second level of the experiment. Wayne tells Jean that they would all agree to participate in the second level of the experiment without hesitation, as it's very easy for them, especially since they're all used to staying up late and can go for many nights without sleep. However, Jean disagrees with them and tells them that the experiment isn't as easy as they think. She explains that the more they stay awake, the more their bodies are at risk of developing illnesses. She reminds them that the first level was easy because they only had to stay awake for 1 day, but the second level will definitely be harder. They'll have to stay awake for 2 or 3 days without sleep. After she finishes speaking, they decide to leave because it's getting late. Beach walks with Sin and tells her that he watches her Instagram live streams. It's clear from his tone that he likes her, but Sin ignores him and gets into a taxi to leave. When Jean gets home, she gives her sister the new phone she bought for her. She tells her to focus on her studies and not worry about the loan, reassuring her that she found a good job and will pay off the loan as soon as possible. At that moment, Wayne's father arrives to talk to him and asks why he's been avoiding him and not speaking to him at all. Wayne ignores him, walks away, and it's clear that something is bothering him about his father's lack of attention, as he's always busy with work. Sin, meanwhile, arrives at her apartment, where she talks to her mother on the phone. She tells her that she's fed up with medical school and wants to study communications, but her mother refuses and scolds her for her poor exam results. She advises her to stay away from social media and focus on her studies so she can graduate and become a doctor. The next day, Jean and her friends go to the company because Dr. Miller called them. We learn that he's offering them the chance to participate in the second level of the experiment, but warns them that it will be much harder. They will have to stay awake for 5 full days without sleep. He explains that the duration of this phase might even be longer, as the amount of serotonin in each person's brain will differ, meaning the serotonin levels on the watch might not be exactly the same for everyone. They are all shocked because 5 days without sleep is a very long time, and it will be incredibly difficult to stay awake for that long. Jean asks Dr. Miller how much they would get if they managed to complete this level, and he tells her they will receive 500,000 baht. He tries to entice them with the money to get them to agree to participate. Eventually, they all agree, and the experiment begins. After 3 days, they are all extremely exhausted and desperate to sleep. Their serotonin levels have dropped to under 40%. When Wayne goes to his basketball practice, He's so tired and unfocused that he doesn't notice the ball coming toward him, and it hits him in the head, causing him to fall to the ground. Wayne's teammate comes over to help him up, but he overhears one of his classmates calling him a failure and blaming him for his mother's death. Wayne gets angry and punches him, threatening to kill him if he ever speaks about his mother again. But to his surprise, his classmate insists he didn't say anything, and Wayne realizes he must be hallucinating from staying awake for 3 days. He checks his watch and sees that his serotonin levels have dropped to 47%. Later that night, Jean is studying in her room but feels extremely exhausted and can't focus, especially because June is playing the guitar. She gets angry and tells June to stop so she can study. Before Jean can continue, June interrupts, telling her that her behavior has been strange lately. June asks her what kind of job she did to earn 100,000 baht in one day. Jean ignores the question and leaves. June notices the company card on her desk, and it's clear that she's planning something. The next day, Sin goes to university and notices that her serotonin levels have dropped to 37%. As she walks around, she notices other students wearing the company's watch. She meets up with her friends and tells them that there are other students participating in the experiment who are still in the first level. This means that they are the only ones in the second level now, as they've been awake for 4 days and look like zombies. While talking, Jean notices that everyone's serotonin levels have dropped below 40%, except for Wayne, whose levels have increased to 52%. Jean realizes that Wayne has the highest levels because he plays basketball every day. She concludes that the more they move, the more serotonin they produce. Her friends are impressed by her deduction, and she suggests they visit Beach's house and swim in his pool to help them move more and boost their serotonin levels. After a while, Wayne sits down and talks to Jean, asking her about her family. She tells him that a gang killed her parents 3 years ago, and since then, she's been working selling food to support her sister and grandmother. Wayne is deeply affected by what she says and changes the subject. He tells her that he has an idea that will help them stay awake for a long period. Later, Wayne makes drinks for his friends and secretly adds very strong stimulants that he stole from a pharmacy lab at the college. He explains that if they sleep, they'll die because of the chip in their necks. So their only option is to take the stimulants to stay awake. Jean is reluctant, warning that the stimulants are dangerous and could cause strokes. But before she can say more, she sees Wayne drinking one of the drinks himself and insists that they have no choice. After some hesitation, Jean and the others drink the concoctions and start dancing to keep moving and increase their serotonin levels. Later, Sin comes out of the bathroom and hears strange noises coming from Beach's room. She goes in and discovers that Beach has been keeping many photos and videos of her. She realizes that he's been stalking her, which frightens her. Sin loses consciousness and falls to the ground. Jean and Wayne rush to help her, trying to revive her before the chip in her neck malfunctions and kills her. They manage to wake her up just in time, and they notice their serotonin levels have reached 100%. They head to the company to collect their money from Dr. Miller and tell him they will not participate in the experiment again. Dr. Miller tries to convince them to join the third level, offering them 1 million baht, but they refuse and leave. Back at home, they finally get some much-needed rest after 5 days of torment. When they wake up, they head to university. Beach approaches Sin and apologizes for his actions, telling her he kept the photos because he liked her. Sin forgives him, but after the conversation, she walks away. Meanwhile, Jean is called to Dr. Natasha's office because her grades have dropped significantly, even though she was once the top student in her class. Jean explains that she's been busy with the company experiment and hasn't been able to focus on her studies. She promises to improve her grades and concentrate on her studies because she won't participate in the experiment again. After leaving the university, Wayne approaches Jean and confesses his feelings for her. However, Jean interrupts him, telling him that she only considers him a friend and that she no longer has time for love because her focus is entirely on her studies. Wayne gets upset and goes to a bar, hoping to forget his feelings for Jean. The next day, Jean sees an ambulance at the university and is shocked when she notices that the student being carried out is wearing the company's watch. She realizes that the student died because he fell asleep before finishing the second level of the experiment. When she returns home, she finds that her grandmother is very sick, so she takes her to the hospital. June arrives and asks what happened. Jean explains that their grandmother had a stroke and needs to be transferred to a better hospital for treatment. However, they don't have the money for the hospital because Jean used all her savings to pay off the loan. June then hands her an envelope with 500,000 baht inside, explaining that she participated in the experiment and completed both the first and second levels. Jean gets angry and yells at her for joining such a dangerous experiment without consulting her first. June cuts her off, saying she did it to help with the household expenses, and that Jean should be grateful instead of yelling at her. After a tense moment, June leaves, upset. The next day, Jean goes to the company to talk to Dr. Miller, begging him not to let June participate in the third level of the experiment because she's worried for her. To her shock, Dr. Miller reveals that June has already signed up for the third level. Jean is furious and threatens to call the police if he doesn't remove the chip from June's neck. Dr. Miller tells her that since June signed the contract and agreed to all the terms, the police won't do anything. He offers to remove the chip if Jean convinces her friends to join the third level of the experiment. Jean is deeply upset by this and leaves the company, taking June with her. Jean goes to meet her friends and tells them everything that happened. She begs them to join her in the third level of the experiment to save her sister June from death because, unfortunately, it's impossible for her to pass the level. Sin interrupts, saying that passing the second level was already extremely difficult, and there's no way they can survive the third level because it's much harder than what they've already been through. Wayne agrees to help Jean and join the experiment, but Sin and Beach refuse, fearing for their lives, and decide to leave. The next day, Jean and June go to the company, where they find Beach waiting for them, saying he has decided to help them. Soon after, Sin shows up and tells them she's changed her mind and will participate with them in the experiment. They enter Dr. Miller's office, where he informs them that the third level will require them to stay awake for 10 days. The group feels they have no choice but to continue. They go to Dr. Natasha's hospital, where she injects them with a very strong stimulant and tells them she'll provide them with the same injection every day to help them stay awake. She advises them to stay in the hospital until they finish the third level so they can be together because if they go home now, one of them could accidentally fall asleep and die. They agree to stay in the hospital, and Dr. Natasha tells them to contact her if they need anything. The next day, Wayne exercises to boost his serotonin levels, while the others try to keep busy to avoid sleeping. Days pass, and they continue taking the stimulant to stay awake. But by the 6th day, Beach is playing video games on his laptop when they suddenly hear gunshots outside the building. They begin to hallucinate, imagining things that aren't real. Wayne starts seeing his deceased mother. Sin imagines her face is covered with pimples, and Jean hallucinates that her sister June is dead on the floor. June manages to wake Jean up, but the group is exhausted and can no longer keep going. Sin decides to leave the hospital and return home, but Wayne stops her, insisting they stay together to protect each other. Sin gets angry, accusing Wayne of only caring about Jean and joining the experiment to make Jean love him, not to help her. Wayne yells at Sin, calling her selfish and saying she never cared about helping Jean. Beach tries to calm Wayne down, but before he can finish, they start insulting Wayne, calling him a child who just wants to play video games. Wayne and Beach fight physically. Jean, feeling desperate, goes looking for Dr. Natasha to stop the fighting and calm everyone down. By chance, she discovers a room with surveillance cameras showing her friends, and she realizes they've been monitored the whole time. She finds a file marked, "Needed, actress for the role of doctor," and is shocked to find a photo of Dr. Miller inside the file. Jean realizes that Miller is an actor, not a real doctor, and that the entire experiment was planned by Dr. Natasha. She deduces that there is no company, and that Natasha created the experiment to extract serotonin from their brains to wake up her comatose lover. Natasha enters the room, asking what Jean is doing there. Jean panics and runs to her friends, telling them everything. She urges them to contact the police, but the phone network is cut off. Natasha speaks to them through the microphones, explaining that she shut down the network and that they won't leave the building until she extracts all the serotonin from their brains, even if they die in the process. Wayne tries to open the door, but to his shock, it's locked, and they're trapped. They attempt to break the door down, but fail. On the 7th day, Sin stands in front of the surveillance cameras, cursing Natasha and promising revenge. She smashes all the cameras. Meanwhile, Wayne loses consciousness. Jean tries to revive him but fails, and the chip in his neck kills him after he sleeps for a minute. Natasha confirms his death by checking his heartbeat on the watch. She takes his body to the camera room to remove the chip and extract the serotonin, but suddenly Wayne wakes up, hitting Natasha in the head. It turns out he was never dead. He had faked his death by injecting himself with a drug that stops his heart for a few seconds. Jean and her friends realized that everything that happened was part of Jean's plan. She had tricked them into thinking Wayne had died, so that Natasha would come to take his body, allowing them to escape. Jean confronts Natasha, asking why she did this to them, especially since they loved and respected her. Natasha opens the curtain and reveals her comatose lover, explaining that he had been awake for 15 days for a study on the effects of sleep deprivation, but jumped off a high building and ended up in a coma. For the past 20 years, she's been trying to find a way to wake him, eventually discovering that serotonin extracted from the brains of those who stay awake for long periods can revive him. Jean calls Natasha crazy and selfish, accusing her of putting many lives in danger. Natasha breaks down in tears, saying she did it to save her lover. She then suddenly attacks Jean, injecting her with a sedative. Sin and Beach manage to stop her, but Jean is knocked unconscious and is in critical danger of dying. Wayne tries to revive her with a defibrillator to save her life. Natasha fights Sin and Beach, but Sin knocks her out with a blow to the head. Jean finally regains consciousness, and Natasha is arrested for her crimes. All the chips implanted in Jean, her friends, and the other students who participated in the experiment are removed. Wayne returns home, apologizes to his father for the way he treated him, and embraces him. June helps Jean prepare food to sell, while Sin goes back to her life as a blogger, announcing on a live stream that she has finally achieved her dream of leaving medical school and entering communications. A few months later, Jean and her friends relax at Beach's house, enjoying life without the pressure of the experiment. Wayne finishes a video, and for the first time in a long while, they are free from the nightmare.